presence of God. Thank you, praise team, leading us in worship tonight. Thank you, Pastor, for allowing me to stand behind this pulpit and speak to people that you shepherd, including myself. We're thankful for you. I'm going to talk to us for a few minutes tonight. It is good to see Brother Hunt back from his 2 weeks and Brother Boswell back from his 2 weeks in the oil fields. Glad to have them back with us, being able to worship with them and be here for our Easter services this weekend. It's always good to have our family with us, is it not, Anacoca? Y'all, throughout this week and through this weekend, the next week, be much in prayer for Brother Jeffrey and his family, also the Brooks family. Also, we need to continue praying for Sister Mary, continue praying for KK. Good report from Sister Mary. Absolutely want to hear a good report from her. We want to continue praying for KK. I think they took her to the Children's Hospital, something last night. We want to hold her up in prayer. She needs a touch from God. I mean, we've always called her KK. It's Sister Brandy's girl. I don't know what everybody else. Michaela, that's her name. There we go. But we want to continue throughout this week and this weekend holding them up in prayer that God would touch them. Also continue to pray for Sister Jonah and her mother. She is at home. She's got her at home now. We want to hold her up in prayer for strength for her mother, just for peace in their family. We're going to go to the Lord tonight in Genesis 29, 16 through 18. And then I'll have you be seated after those. And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Y'all may be seated. Go down to verse 21, and it says, And Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go to her. And 23, and it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him and went to her. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah, this is 25 through 30. And he said to Laban, What is this thou hast done unto me? Did not I serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? And Laban said, It must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 more years. You got to work 7 more years for the one he wanted first. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. And Laban gave Rachel, his daughter, to Bilhah, the handmaid, for her to be married. And he went and also to Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years for Rachel. I'm going to talk to us a little while tonight on the waiting. The waiting. So we live in a world of fast-paced things. We live in a world, as I was a kid growing up, and I know this is going to surprise some of y'all, but the internet did come in my lifetime when I was, a kid. And I can remember growing up, and I'm not picking on Daddy, but I can remember growing up, we had the internet, and Daddy was always griping because it wasn't fast enough. It wasn't fast enough. It wasn't fast enough. I remember as a kid hearing him talk about how slow the internet was. And it hasn't got no better, I don't think. I'll get on Google, and I love history. I love facts. I love to I'll hear something and I want to study it. So I'll pull it up and read it and see what it's got. I'll pull it up and you got the stupid little squiggly lines. I don't know. We make sure to put that for our backdrop tonight, Brother Chris. The little, whatever it is, little buffering sign, the little buffering sign that comes up, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at that. I'm irritated because I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. I pull up at McDonald's. I order food. They tell me to pull up. It's supposed to be fast food. What? Why am I having to wait? It's supposed to be fast food. We want everything now. We want it quick. We want it fast. We want it moving. It's the world that we live in, the nature of the society that we live in. We want it quick. We want it quick. We want it quick. Something that I have come to realize, and I know I'm probably not fast over in other countries, or not slow. It's not the big same thing in other countries, but over in other countries, I get it tickled sometimes. I watch the little house hunter shows, and they'll do a European edition, and you'll go and you'll go in this tiny little kitchen that this organ barely fits in Italy or something, and you're like, man, they're excited about that kitchen. What in the world, I mean, our kitchen's here. My father built a house in San Antonio, and his kitchen's 20 something by 20 something. It's huge, and we like bigger. We like all this stuff. We like fast, big, everything. And it's not always like that in other part of the world. Although I would imagine they want their internet fast over there too. But we want everything fast, everything fast, everything fast, everything fast. So Jacob, he sees Rachel. He falls in love with her. He goes to Laban and he tells them that he's going to work for 7 years. Once the 7 years is over, Laban tricks him and gives him Leah. So then he has to work 7 more years. That ain't fast. That's 14 years. A lot of times in our life, we'll get words, or we will get plans. We'll put these plans together, or God will give us something that's going to happen with us, plans that we're going to see fulfilled. And for some reason, we look at it like, man, I want it now. This has got to happen now. This has got to happen quick. I want it quick, 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 quick. Quick, quick, quick. Well, something that I've had to come to realize, and it took me a long time. I'm 44, and it's taken me till just very recently. But I don't know if y'all know this or not, Pastor, but God's not McDonald's. He's not a fast food joint. He's not going to do it always on our timing. So I'm going to talk to us, like I said, and the wait. The wait is seldom what we plan. It's seldom what we want. It's seldom what we even like. 2 Peter 3:8 says, though, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as is one day. So I hope that if God speaks something to me, I hope that if I've got these ideas and plans that I feel like God's leading me on, I hope it don't take 1,000 years. Probably ain't going to make it. And so many times that's what we do. So many times that's what we start thinking about is, hey, my days are numbered. I'm 40 years old. I'm 50 years old. I'm 60 years old. Where is this going to come? When is this going to come to pass? I want to see it. I want it now. But I want to pull up and wait. I want it now. But how many times, most everybody in here, I think we got a few young ones in here, but most of us are older ones. And it is almost never, ever going to be that quick with God. We'll talk to us for a few minutes tonight about a very familiar story about old David. 1 Samuel 16:11-13. And it says, and Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all thy children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him in, but he was ruddy and withal, of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. And 13 says, then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So we have the story of David. It's a common story. Most of us know it. We know that the next day he became the king. Saul moved on down the road, and everything started from there. He was the king, right? Wrong. That's not the way it happened. But what happened? God just anointed him. He anointed him to be king. So why didn't, what was going on there? Well, God's timing and our timing are not the same. He didn't immediately become king. In fact, a few scriptures later, the same man that was anointed to become king had to play the instrument, play the harp for the one that was the king that he was supposed to replace so that he could soothe his evil spirits. In the next chapter, David has to kill a giant that king that he's supposed to replace should have been man enough to go out there and kill. He had to go out there and take care of something for a guy that he was supposed to replace. I wonder, and Pastor, if I'm wrong for this, tell me I'm wrong and you can tell the church I'm wrong. But I wonder how many times David stepped out there and said, why am I having to play the instrument to calm this guy down? I'm already here in the throne room. Why don't you just go ahead and remove him? I'm here. I could just take the throne. I wonder if it ever crossed David's mind when he went out there in that field, man, Saul should be doing this. Why am I having to kill this old ugly giant? I wonder. Because he was anointed king. He was supposed to be the king. David was anointed, or his promise was given when he was between 12 and 16 years old. But he was 30 years old when he became king. How many of us would think if God spoke something to you that it's going to be 20 years down the road before it comes to pass? Not many of us. Not many of us. You know, how many times, I'm going to use us as an example, but me and Kelsey, multiple times, we had preachers come, everybody here knows, we had preachers come and preach to us and talk to us about, God's going to prophesy or give us a word. God's going to give y'all a baby. God's going to give y'all a baby. God's going to give y'all a baby. And we waited 5 years, I believe it was. 5 years. That wasn't our plans. That wasn't our plans. Sister Buller had it right. There was a whole lot of tears. A whole lot of tears. A whole lot of tears. But his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His time is not our time. And guess what? Yes, I thought many times, man, I'm going to be 50 years old in just a few years. 50 years old. I don't want to be Abraham. He had a promise. He had a word spoken to him. It took a long time for that to come to pass. I don't want to be however old Abraham was and have a child. I want to do that. But how many times do we look at it from our own eyes and we don't think God is in control? He's given us something. He's told us something. He's spoken something. He has given us this word. We just got to learn to trust in him. But most of the problem, and I'm speaking for myself. I don't know if it's the same way with anybody else, but most of it boils down to our own mortality. We think, God, you're going to do it. I trust in you. You're going to do it. But I only have about 70 years on this earth, and not one of us are actually promised those 70 years. Not one of us is promised the next second, much less 70 years. So we look at it from our own mortality. But Anacoca, as believers, we are going to live an eternity forever with God if we do what Acts 2:38 tells us to do. So this is not the end. This is not the end. This here is not the end. We have got to start looking at the bigger picture. I'm the world's worst. I am absolutely the world's worst. I probably, if everybody put all their wanting it now in a bowl and you put mine in a bowl beside you, mine would probably out surpass everybody in here. I want it now. I have no patience, none. I don't deer hunt because somebody don't tie a deer up out in the middle of the field so I can walk out there and shoot it and go back to the house. Plus, I don't really want to kill it. But I have no patience for it. Daddy will tell you, when I was growing up, when we were growing up, we'd go fishing on the boat and we'd get out there in the boat. And if I put 2 hooks in the water and 5 seconds was pretty much was what I did, I just kept throwing it. I would set it down and start talking, or I would give up and start talking. And then Daddy would say, "Dear Lord, shut up, you're scaring the fish off." Well, there ain't no fish here. I just put 2 hooks in the water. There wasn't no fish here. I want it now. Is anybody else in here like that? Is anybody else in here thinking, man, God, you spoke a word to me. I want it now. I want it now. But that's not the way he works. Because he knows what he's doing. It's a bigger picture. It's not just about us. He loves us. He speaks a word to us. It's going to come to pass. They don't always have to be on our timing. He knows what he's doing. And guess what? We may not think he got it right, but he always gets it right. He always gets it right. You know, I'm not getting into all having babies and stuff, but if me and Kels would have got tired of waiting and we would have went out and tried to find a baby to adopt or whatever, all this other stuff, we wouldn't have possibly got that little angel, that little miracle. And again, God probably knows I'm impatient. And that little baby is probably the most peaceful child I've ever known. And I think we figured up the other day, Mom and Daddy have like 20 something grandkids, so I've known a lot. But she is just so sweet. When it's time to go to bed, she basically comes and tells you, I mean, it's a very long process now, very long process. But she'll generally come and tell you, Daddy, it's time to go to bed. Daddy, it's not night. Of course, then we have to do 643 kisses. Each person in the family in the home has to give a kiss. Then we have to hold hands and pray. And if mommy's not in there to pray, we have to wait on mommy. And so there's this long process, but God knew what he was doing, and it was perfect. It may not have been what we thought was the right timing, but what did I say? God's timing and our timing. It's 2 different things sometimes, but it's always right because he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. David became one of the greatest kings, the greatest king that Israel ever had. But it didn't happen overnight. David had to live in a cave. David had to do all kinds of other things. In the waiting, in 1 Samuel 27, David said, the very first verse, David said, in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. David, one of the greatest kings that ever lived, a man who God called a man after his own heart, a man who was anointed to be the king of Israel. And here he is saying, that's it. Saul's going to kill me. Saul's going to kill me. And as I was studying, as I read that scripture today, I thought about some of us sometimes, me, just talk about me. How many times, how quickly can we go from woo, happy, joy to, oh, God's forgot about me. God, did you see what's going on here? How many times? I was thinking today about the children of Israel. They come out of Egypt. They seen all the plagues happen in Egypt to get them out. And then they come out there and said, God brought us to the wilderness to die. We should have stayed in Egypt. They seen the pillar of fire. They seen manna from heaven. They seen all these things, and yet they still doubted from time to time. So, church, if you don't catch anything else, I'm not going to say that it's okay to doubt, but we're not alone. We're human beings. We're human beings. The children of Israel did it. There's going to be times that doubt creeps in. A few weeks ago, I felt something. We're here at the front, praying, worshiping, and I said it, talked about it. And what I was talking about was, there's times that we, may not be going through anything, but we can step out and give God some worship for somebody else in the church that may be going through something that we don't know about. It doesn't always have to be necessarily about me. We can worship, we can give everything we have for somebody else. And guess what? We'll talk about being nosy for me. I'll talk about me being. I don't have to know what their problem is to be able to worship for them, to be able to stand in a gap for them, to be able to be there for them. The waiting isn't always easy. David, we just seen David. He just got to the point where it was like, what? Saul's going to kill me. That's it. The waiting's not easy. And so we don't always know what our brother and sister's going through in here. We don't always see. We don't have to. That's why we come out and we worship. That's why we want the presence of God to fill this house. We want God to have his way. We want God to move. And we don't need all the answers. Because sometimes the waiting for somebody else may be hard right now. All the time that David was waiting on Saul or on God's promise to be fulfilled, all that time, he went through all kinds of things. He went through all kinds of emotions. He was scared. He was worried. There was times of joy. There was times of happiness. There was times of excitement. But those times of waiting aren't always easy. But the Bible does say that he will never leave us and forsake us. If he has a plan, it's going to come to pass. We have to get to the point where we take ourselves out of it and say, God, what's your will? God, I know what you've spoken to me. I know what's going to come to pass. I know that it's going to come to pass. And God, be with me on those days that are harder than others. Be with me on those days. That was one of the things that I always thought was beautiful. You've heard me tell it, but I always thought it was beautiful with me and Kels during our waiting season. I would get down and I'd be crying like a baby. Why don't we have a baby? Why don't we have a baby? Why don't we have a baby? And Kels would be like, and she looks sweet and innocent, but she's not always that sweet. And she would say, we have a word. We've got a word. We've got a word. We've got a promise. And then there'd be days that and I'm the one with the microphone and she's not in here so I can say things like this. But, there would be days that she would be down and I was always sweet. Baby, we have a promise. We have a word. Just Daddy's giving me bad looks. But I wasn't mean to Kill. But, that's the way God works. And in that waiting season, in that waiting season, that's why we have to be sensitive to the move of God. That's why we have to be sensitive to the Spirit. When we're in that waiting season, isn't it nice when somebody comes up to us and says, "Brother, I got your back. I'm on your side." And again, we don't have to know the answers. We don't have to know the questions. We don't have to know the problem. We don't have to know the situation. But being there for our brothers and sisters in that waiting time is just the way God works. And I already said it. Sister Renee, if you'd come to the piano, I already said it, but Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. The waiting is not always. But if we want God's purpose fulfilled in our life, that's where we're molded. I can guarantee you, if David would have became the king the day he was anointed, I don't know, just like a guarantee, but I would think that if David would have became king the day he was anointed, he probably wouldn't have been the king that he was. Because all those trials, all those things that he went through, all that doubt, all those issues that came about, that's what molded him. That's what made David into who he was. That's who made David the great king that he was. That's what made David, correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor, God didn't call him a man after his own heart till he was a man, till he was grown, till he was older. He didn't call him that as a boy. He called him that as a man. He said, "This is a man after my own heart." This was a man after my own heart. That waiting season is when God transforms us into what he wants us to be. It wasn't my plan. It wasn't my plan when I went out, Pastor, me and him had this conversation, and in ministry, I hope I'm okay for saying this, but in ministry, I always said, I'm not going to be one of those guys that goes and gets his license and sits in a church and is just not useful. I don't want to do that. But you know what? I don't know. I feel like I know what God has planned for me and Sister Kelsey's ministry. But you know what? Standing right here by this man, this is making me. This is making me. This is transforming me into what God has called me to do. The waiting isn't always fun. But if we'll start trying to look at it like God wants us to look at it, if we start looking at it as in he's working on me, he's making me what he wants me to be. Me and Kels, I don't know, probably wouldn't have been, well, we're not perfect parents. For whatever reason, me and Kels needed some transforming. We needed some work on us so that we could be better parents, and we're not perfect. But so we could be better parents for that little angel. And so you know what? At the end of the day, it wasn't fun. There were tears. But at the end of the day, it was worth waiting on God. And I look back and I thank God for that waiting. I thank God for that waiting because he knew what he was doing. And Pastor, I can say that whatever his plans for me and Sister Kel's ministry is, I thank God for the waiting. I thank God for the waiting because he knows what he's doing. Let's stand across this house.